2 weeks ago, the Conservatives put forward a motion in the House of Commons calling for the Parliament of Canada to recognize a genocide happening in territories controlled by ISIS in Syria and Iraq, a genocide against Christians, Yazidis, and Shia Muslims. Well, the NDP and the Bloc voted for that motion. The Liberals voted it down, all but 4 Liberals saying no to the idea of genocide. That was on June 14th. Then on June 16th, the Liberals said, yes, there was a genocide happening, but only to Yazidis. Why the change? Because the United Nations said there was a genocide happening against Yazidis. A man that has been working hard on this file, trying to get the government to do the right thing, to recognize a genocide, but also to save and rescue people from what's happening in ISIS-controlled areas. Joining me now, Majed el-Shafie is the man behind One Free World International. And Majed, we haven't spoken since the whole issue of the vote came up and then the Liberal reversal. Let's start with the vote. How did you feel watching MP after MP stand up in the House of Commons and say, I don't see a genocide here?
Quite honestly, it's brought back memories of disappointing when the government took wrong decisions in many parts of our modern history, such as St. Louis ship, for example, when this Jewish immigrants was running away from the Holocaust, and at the time Prime Minister Mackenzie King returned it back for them to face genocide and Holocaust. And this is the same thing happening right now, even on a bigger scale, to a big degree. The government failed to recognize that this is genocide. The government failed to understand the situation on the ground, ignored the UK Parliament, ignored the United States Congress, ignored the European Parliament. They ignored all of this, and it's quite honestly, it's not only disappointing to me, it's disappointing for the whole country and for the value of this nation.
Now, we started a petition at deniers.ca, and if people haven't signed it yet, it's deniers.ca, to try and pressure the government to say, you know what, we need to call this genocide. We need to stand up and do the right thing. It frustrates me as a Canadian to see the government of the day, and I'd feel the same way if it was Stephen Harper was still in power and it was the Conservatives. It frustrates me to see them say, we will call it genocide when the United Nations does. So this report came out 2 days after the vote in Geneva from a UN body that said there's genocide against Yazidis. Stephane Dion that day said, yeah, okay, there's genocide. I asked him specifically why he wouldn't call it genocide for Christians and Shia Muslims, and he simply said, well, this is the right way to do it. We have to wait for a report from a third-party body. How do you feel, given what you've seen when you've been there, given what you've heard from first-hand, second-hand reports, how does that make you feel?
It's absolutely nonsense. It's absolutely political crap, if I may add. And quite honestly, I believe that the government does not want to recognize it as a genocide as yet, because the government don't want to do too much. They don't want to interfere. Once they recognize it as a genocide, they will have a moral obligation to do more to save the people and other minorities. But they choose to ignore Christians, they choose to ignore Yazidis in the beginning, they choose to ignore Druze, the Muslim Shias, gay community. They choose to ignore all of these communities. And right now, they have to ask themselves questions. If they are government that willing to take the right thing, not the popular thing, or not.
The right thing or the popular thing. The right thing would, and the popular thing, I believe, would be to call it a genocide. I think there's an awful lot of people that wonder why the government isn't standing up for these groups. Justin Trudeau was, he and his government were adamant that they could not possibly, when bringing the 25,000 Syrian refugees over, they couldn't possibly ask about religion. So the majority, we understand, the overwhelming majority of the 25,000 people that we brought were from Sunni Muslim groups. They were not Shias, they were not Yazidis, they were not Christians. The most vulnerable people were left behind. But he did promise, he said, even though we can't ask about religion, we will make special provisions for the LGBT community. Well, now he's admitted that they failed on that because, excuse me, Majed, if you don't have a spot on your form to ask somebody about their religion, and it would be wrong to ask them their religion, guess what? You're not going to have a spot on the form. It says, what's your sexual preference? that's just not going to happen.
The truth and the reality, this is just politically correctness. These people is being persecuted because of their religious belief. So explain to me why I cannot help the most vulnerable, why I cannot help Christians and Yazidis and Druze and Ismailis, that people that they have no militias to protect them. So they're saying, no, we cannot ask for the religion. I'm saying, why you cannot? They've been persecuted because of their beliefs. They've been persecuted because of their religion. So why I cannot sit down and ask an honest question? Are you part of this minority? Are you part of this minority that cannot protect itself? Are you part of this minority that don't have militias to protect you? And quite honestly, I would say the way it is without politically correctness. The way it is, I don't care about shirtless prime minister. I care about prime minister that do his work and help the people on the ground that they are facing genocide. I met 9 years old little girl, used to rape her 20 times a day. So don't come sit down in front of me and tell me they are not persecuted or they are not facing genocide. I would not accept it, as simple as that.
I want to ask you about that little girl, and you've told me your story before, and I know that you're still trying to help them come over, but I just want to remind people, if you want to put pressure on the government, make sure that you sign the petition at deniers.ca and let your voice be heard. Now, Majed, you told me this story. It broke my heart hearing about it. This 9-year-old girl, former sex slave of ISIS, but she's not the only one that you're trying to rescue. You've got hundreds that you and others have gone to the government and said, we've got them in a safe spot. Let us bring them to Canada now. Any movement on that at all? I know the opposition parties are with you. I know the opposition parties say, you know what, this is a good thing. We're behind you. But it has to be the government. It has to be Immigration Minister John McCallum. It has to be Prime Minister Trudeau giving the okay for this to happen. Any news?
Right now, as far as I can release to the media, that we had a meeting in my office with the chief of staff of the Minister of Immigration. We give them the proposal one more time. We're still in communication with them. Quite honestly, I'm glad that the meeting took place, but I'm not very. I don't care about meetings and phone calls. I care about action. So I'm looking forward to see real action, not just an empty promises.
Okay, but a meeting that has potential, and that's better than the last time we spoke about this. So I'm going to hold out hope that it's more than 300 women that were former sex slaves of ISIS that you're trying to bring to Canada, correct?
Yes, we made this proposal. Us and ORAT, which is the Office of Immigration of the Catholic Church, we made it very clear that we are willing to work with the government side by side and in order to save these girls and to bring them here. I don't think that the government need to waste any further time to take the right decision here.
All right. And hopefully they don't waste any more time on the right decision on genocide. Majed, thanks for the time today. We'll chat again soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Go to deniers.ca if you want to sign our petition. Deniers.ca. Have your voice heard and make sure you support good works from groups like One Free World International.
Thanks for watching. Click here to never miss a Rebel update. Want even more of the Rebel? Well, click here to become a premium member.